Good Tuesday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and this is the Jerry and Jerry Show on the I Love CVille Network. It's great to connect with college football fan bases across the Eastern Seaboard, heck, across the country. College football on the brain, and for those that have a sour taste in your mouth, college basketball practice has started for Tony Bennett's bunch. The boys on the hardwood. We'll talk round ball, we'll talk pigskin today on the program. The Jerry and Jerry Show airs on every social media platform known to mankind. It's presented by Stablecraft Brewing in Waynesboro, Virginia. Stablecraft Brewing, taste the best farm fresh beer and food at Stablecraft Brewing in Waynesboro. This brewery is fantastic for families, for sports fans, for those that love games, for those that love the outdoors, for those that love live music. And frankly speaking, some of the best craft beer and cider in the business. I got a six-pack right here in front of me. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot wait to enjoy the six-pack. In the six-pack, we have the Stablecraft Brewing Robot Cowboy IPA. It's a New England IPA, some of my favorite. The lightest beer you got, an American Light Lager from Stablecraft Brewing. I think this is just absolutely fantastic branding. The Bitchin' Brown Ale, my colleague Judah Wickhauer's favorite. And if we go to the two-shot and welcome our star of the show, Hootie Ratcliffe, he's got a cider that's got the man licking his chops over there, Hootie.
Yeah, I guess they knew I like blackberry, so blackberry hard cider, Stablecraft Brewing. Can't wait to see what that tastes like. It looks delicious, and we want to thank Mark Lickman for bringing those by this morning. That just looks so cool.
It looks absolutely cool. Fantastic PR guy, Mark Lickman, friend of the program, made this relationship possible. Hootie Ratcliffe, we'll start with you. Brennan Armstrong, Robert, and I, they come to Scott Stadium this past Friday for a national televised contest. The line was 8.5, depending on where you're shopping. It comes down to a buzzer beater. Frankly, it comes down to penalties. Where do you want to begin with NC State, UVA, and a nationally televised contest?
Well, I guess the main thing is, even though Virginia lost at the last second on a walk-off field goal, thanks in part to those penalties, I would think if I'm a Virginia fan, even though I'm disappointed, particularly the way they lost, there is some hope out there. A lot of people going into the season thought they had no chance of winning a game like that against a middle-of-the-pack ACC team, but they could have easily have won that game. They should have sent it into overtime, really. This team, it's not going to have a winning season unless something miraculous happens, but they can win a couple of games and maybe start turning the corner toward next year, because they've got some guys that are playmakers, and what they need to do is develop some of the younger talent to where they can contribute, because most of the receiving yards are by two different guys. Malik Washington, who transferred in from Northwestern, I expected him to be good, but he's surpassed my expectations. He was ACC Receiver of the Week and had 170 yards receiving, 107 of that yards after catch, and 2 touchdowns, and made a lot of big plays for Virginia. He's already, Jerry, made more plays of 40 yards or more than the entire Virginia team did last season, just on his own.
He was targeted 14 times, 10 catches, $170 through the air, 2 touchdowns. Clearly, Calandry and Washington have got a connection that's been developed very quickly.
Yeah, and Malachi Fields has been spectacular so far, a local kid from Monticello High School, and doing a bang-up job. And Anthony Calandria continues to impress people. I mean, goodness gracious. He's only 419 yards away from breaking the freshman single-season record at Virginia. 490, he could do that in 2 games. He's already broken the freshman single game record 3 times in 3 games. So this kid has a ton of potential. And he can run the ball, too. He had 43 yards rushing. He actually had 61, but was sacked a couple of times.
On one of those rushes, it was a video game highlight. I mean, it looked like he was running the football with the joystick in his hands. Just made a linebacker, broke the linebacker's ankles.
And that's one of the things I like about him is when things fall apart or if he's purposely going out of the pocket, he's not looking to run like some of the quarterbacks, like Armstrong, for example. I think when Armstrong decides that he's going to have to run it, he just ducks his head and takes off. Calandria, what I like about him is that when he keeps plays alive with his feet, he's still got his eyes focused downfield looking for a receiver. And I don't know how many times he's come close to the line of scrimmage, found a guy open, and got the ball off to him somehow. And that's a rare talent, and I think that's something that's going to serve him well over the rest of his career.
Calandria, guys, clearly the quarterback of the future. Now, we got to cut to the chase. Calandria gets Maryland some turnovers and some poor decision-making in a nationally televised contest. And I hate to say this because the kid's he's a first year. He's a youngster. The penalty when he removed his helmet. Now, to Calandria's credit, and I feel like I'm going to bat for the youngster here, it was clearly falling off as he was falling to the turf.
Yeah.
Now, he then, emphasized the falling off of the helmet by pretty much ripping it off and then posing for the fan base and for those in attendance, much to the delight of those at Scott Stadium. Unfortunately, that leads to terrible kickoff position. And next thing you know, NC State's returnman, one of the most dangerous returnmen in the conference, takes the ball to midfield and really sets up an opportunity for the Wolfpack to take it into UVA territory and try a game-winning field goal. And again, a penalty, this time on the linebacker Jackson, as time expired, one that he likely will never forget for the rest of his life, leads to a re-kick, and NC State, as the clock ticks 0, Hootie, the game-winning field goal.
Yeah, that was almost an automatic make from that range.
Chip shot.
For that kicker, yeah, no question. And you're right, that's the second game in a row where the kickoff return team has blown it. They lost their momentum at Maryland after they went up 14-0, giving up a 98-yard kickoff return the other day. After the Calandria penalty, they were penalized 15 yards on the kickoff. So they were already kicking from further back than they normally would, 15 yards further back. They lost containment again. The kid, like you said, from NC State, Gray, is a really good return man. He returned at 37 yards, I think, to the Virginia 48. That's almost field goal range for their kicker. And they didn't have to do a lot to get in position to kick the winning field goal. So, as you said, Jackson vaulted the center, got another penalty, brought it closer.
Clear-cut penalty.
Yeah, and he's the one that blocked the kick. So if he hadn't vaulted the center, the kick wouldn't have been blocked. He might have made it anyway. And then, down there on the 2-point conversion after the touchdown, Ty Furnish,
the guard,
made a dumb play and got a personal foul, hitting an NC State player after the play was over, and that made him have to go back to the 17-yard line to try a 2-point conversion, and somehow they made it, but the odds of that are not very good.
We got Woki-san watching on Twitter right now. He's a season ticket holder at the University of Virginia since 1998. I count 6 states watching us here on the Jerry and Jerry Show. Viewers and listeners, put your questions in the feed. We will relay them live on air. We'll talk ACC. We'll talk Virginia Tech. I'll ask Hootie the question, what is the best football team in the Atlantic Coast Conference right now? There are currently 6 undefeated ACC football teams, 6 in the Atlantic Coast Conference, unblemished. UVA travels to Boston College for a 2 o'clock kickoff this weekend. The Eagles a 3-point favorite. The over-under, ladies and gentlemen, at 55 points. Hootie, 5 things we learned, and this is something you can find on jerryratcliffe.com. I'm on the website every single day, not only to prepare for the Jerry and Jerry Show, but because I'm a diehard Wahoo fan. jerryratcliffe.com. 5 things we learned in this contest. A lot of people are asking for you to start with Anthony Calandria, the first-year quarterback. who's got moxie and chutzpah for days, my friend.
Oh, no question about it. And I know the coaches don't listen to media people, and they're going to do what they want to do. And they see these guys every day. We don't. But from what I've seen thus far, I think they should just go ahead and award Calandria with the job. I know I can see both sides of the story, but it's been over 3 weeks now since since Tony Muskett has played in a game. He was hurt in the second half of the Tennessee game, but he hasn't been able to answer the bell over the past 3 weeks. Calandria, meanwhile, has taken over this team. He has the confidence of his teammates. He's shown he can move the chains. He's a very accurate passer. He's a very savvy guy. He understands a lot of the game. He's learning. It's on-the-job training. He's going to make some mistakes, but this he's got it. He's not the biggest kid in the world, but he's got a strong arm. He understands the passing game very well. Again, he's going to make some judgment mistakes, but he gets it. He's got good touch. He can throw the deep ball.
He's a threat outside the pocket.
He gives fans hope. He's a reason to come to the game.
There it is.
And I think that's something that Virginia fans really want. I mean, 2 years ago it was Armstrong. Before that it was Bryce Perkins. They gave Virginia hope. They gave the fans hope that, hey, we can be in this game in the fourth quarter. We can possibly win. That's what Calandria does. I mean, in that last touchdown drive, Jerry, that ended up tying it at 21-all in the last minute of the game, he was 5 of 6 passing for 50 yards. It was a 66-yard drive. He was responsible for 60 of those 66 yards. The kid's just got a lot of moxie, and I just like him. And I think you just give him the job. He's earned it. He owns it. He should have the job.
Some of the best commentary from Hootie Ratcliffe, the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer, here on the Jerry and Jerry Show, presented by Stablecraft Brewery. I 1,000% agree with you. The team is 0-4. If there's an opportunity for the fan base to rally around anything, and you see what UVA is trying to do, they're trying to change the in-game experience. You got the lights going on and off. You know, they're trying different things here to try to invigorate the crowd, or to maybe, and I hate to say this, maybe distract the crowd with some smoke and mirrors, because the performance on the field maybe not what it should be. Calandria embodies star power.
Yes.
And some kids, some musicians, some writers, you have this, some artists, they have this it factor. You know, whenever Jerry Ratcliffe's column was in the newspaper, everyone read the column. Whenever Jerry Ratcliffe writes something on jerryratcliffe.com, everyone reads it. You have the it factor. Calandria has that, Hootie.
He does. And, you know, you want your quarterback to have that, because he's the guy that can make magic happen. And so far he has. And I know that Muskett, the philosophy is you don't lose your job because of injury, but it's been, like I said, it's been 3 weeks, and this guy has firmly delivered and has the confidence of his teammates. Do you want to disrupt that kind of success, that kind of rhythm, going to Boston College where you have a chance to win a game, and come home and play William and Mary where you have another chance to win a game and maybe get some momentum going in this program? And I understand what they're trying to do to Scott Stadium with the lights and all that stuff, but I think fans in general believe that's kind of like putting lipstick on a pig.
It's gimmicky.
Yeah. I mean, they're not there for all that stuff. I mean, maybe some people are, but the majority of fans just want to come and see their team compete and have a chance to win. This kid gives you a chance to win.
100% said so well. Chad Wood, he's saying Calandria is awesome, but Calandria's got to know when to be aggressive and when to be smart. 1,000% agree with you. I think we both do.
Yep.
John Blair in Stanton, just a fantastic Esquire, city manager, city attorney, all-around A-plus guy. He says, Jerry and Jerry, I love this show. He also says, where is the breakdown on special teams occurring on returns? Last season and this season, UVA's return team has repeatedly allowed big punt and kick returns. Is it a scheme issue, or is it just simply a talent issue? Please ask that question to Hootie Ratcliffe.
I think it's probably a little bit of both, and I think in some cases the scheme might be there and the players are blowing their assignments. They've lost containment the last two big kickoff returns. The one at Maryland, they lost total containment. There was only one guy on that entire side of the field. And once you get a wall behind you, all you got to do is make one guy miss. Matt Gainard, bless his heart, the kicker, is this last resort safety valve in trying to knock a guy out of bounds. And, it's his first time playing football in his life, even though he's 34 years old. Tackling is not an easy thing to do if you've never done it before.
Right.
And I'm not blaming him, but, they've simply lost containment. That's what they did the other day. You learn that in Little League football and definitely in high school football, that if you're on the edges coming down the field, you can't be sucked into the middle of the field and leave the sidelines open for a guy. Because like I said, a lot of times they just got to make one guy miss, and then it's up to them in the open field to find their way to the end zone. And that's what they've done the last couple of weeks. I'm surprised that the special teams guy hasn't nailed that down a little bit more. And they've had the same problem with some punt returns as well. So that's something they've got to get fixed. You just can't because you're going to kick off and punt every game, and you just can't afford to give up a cheap touchdown or field position like that with the game on the line.
Jerry Ratcliffe dropping dimes. Let's go to the studio camera. Judah Wickower, Stablecraft Brewery, a proud partner of this program in Waynesboro. If you're looking for a fantastic farm-to-table personal experience, an opportunity to just have fantastic quality of life with your friends and family, we very much suggest Stablecraft Brewing, guys. Questions are coming in fast and furious right now. This is a really good one from Leslie, who's watching in Richmond. Guys, I love the program. Do you guys think that Tony Muskett is in fact injured, or is it more of the coaching staff doing right by Muskett and just basically playing the injury card so he doesn't lose face? That's a good question.
Yeah, I could see that, where some people would be curious about that, and I don't think that that's they're putting on a facade. I think he's really hasn't been 100%. Some of these shoulder injuries can really
linger
and throw a quarterback out of whack, and if it's not 100%, and if it affects your ability to throw or to hand off or do your job properly, you don't want to take a chance on that, because you go in, you get it re-injured, and you're probably out for the season. So I don't think they're trying to save face. I think that I truly believe Tony Elliott cares a lot about his players, and that he doesn't want to put a guy out there who isn't healthy enough to do his job properly. So it was a long-term decision instead of a short-term answer, and jeopardizing him for further injury.
Chad Wood wonders if the offensive lineman's going to be benched this week. Says eye poking, jumping over the center on a field goal. We're making elementary school mistakes, and at some point Tony Elliott is going to have to take the heat for this. The fan base over the weekend, and you saw it on Twitter. It's very much percolating on Twitter.
Yep.
Twitter is where emotions go to live, especially the raw emotions from the moment. Much of the fan base are calling for Coach Elliott's job. Some of the fan base, and it's becoming more of a minority, are saying, look, he's in his second year, and his first year was cut up by a tragedy, and he doesn't have his players, his recruits in the system yet. Let's give this guy at least 3 years to go to, from a gimmicky spread offense to a pro-style offense, and to have the recruits that he needs to run his new offense in the system. Then the response on Twitter to that statement was the penalties, especially late game penalties, are a reflection of a coaching staff. Where do you want to go on the Tony Elliott topic?
Yeah, I think the fan base is split.
I think so too.
They were early on against Bronco as well. They were against Mike London. They were against Al Grove. And, you're on one side or the other. Either you support Elliott and want to give him time to, like you said, get his recruits in here that will fit his schemes, and have time to recruit. And some others don't have the patience. They believe that they could go with somebody else. I mean, who are you going to get? But anyways,
I'll throw this for the sake of a talk show to you.
This is a tough place to win football games.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I'll throw this to you for the sake of a talk show.
Right.
Here's strictly for the sake of a talk show. A lot of folks are saying in the era of the transfer portal, the window of patience is much more narrow now.
Mm-hmm.
Because a coach can recruit players that fit his system from other programs that are looking to jump ship, and they no longer have to develop high school talent into college football talent. And the transfer portal has made seats hotter and the window of opportunity more narrow. Do you buy that?
That is true. There's some truth to that, but you also have to consider what program you're talking about. Virginia can't take just any guy in the transfer portal. Some credits don't transfer. They've lost some guys because of that. They're not just going to throw their doors open and take 30 transfers like some schools do. Some of the guys may not be able to qualify academically, honestly. And so it's not like Colorado where you can go in with Deion Sanders and recruit 80 new players, a whole new football team. I don't think they have taken full advantage of the transfer portal. I think they could do better, something that they're going to have to emphasize a lot more this coming year, because they're going to lose some of their better playmakers, like Washington as a graduate student. And it's just something you can restock and rebuild your team. And a lot of the successful teams have done that. Florida State has been really good at that. They took quite a few transfers. I'm not sure Virginia can take as many as Florida State, but that is true. And but it doesn't always guarantee success, that or the NIL. Look what Texas A&M has done, for example, with the NIL and the transfer portal, and they're still struggling. So it's not the complete answer, but it does put more pressure on the coaches to get things turned around in a hurry. And they do have some guys that have helped them from the portal. They just don't have enough.
Jerry Ratcliffe dropping dimes here, guys. We have 6 states watching us on the program. Vanessa Parkhill on Earlysville and Earlysville liking the show. Twitter, jump in with comments. We will gladly relay them live on air. Wendy Ratcliffe Perry, thank you for sharing the show. I believe she's your daughter right there, Hootie Ratcliffe.
She absolutely is, and I love her to death.
She's watching the program. Thank you kindly for sharing the show. Joshua Tracy, hello. Heather Walker, Johnson Village, hello. Lisa Costello on Cherry, hello. Newly married man Jesse Rutherford in Nelson County, the Board of Supervisor, watching the program.
Congratulations.
Aaron King, welcome to the program. This question is coming from Fort Myers, Florida. Jerry and Jerry, I am a 1998 UVA graduate, and we watch all the games as much as possible. We also get up to usually 1 home game per year and a couple of basketball games per year. Please ask Hootie Ratcliffe this question. Will Anthony Calandria transfer after this season?
That's a good question, and it's something that a lot of people are wondering about, because, I mean, look at the situation after what he's been able to do the past 3 weeks. How do you tell him, if you're Tony Elliott, that you're going to be on the bench this week at Boston College and Tony Muskett's going to start?
You can't.
And if Muskett comes in and plays well, it's still his job. And if it stays that way the rest of the season, Calandria is going to look around and say, well, I had the potential here to become Virginia's all-time leading passer and total offense guy, if assuming his career continues to go the way it has in the first 3 games. And there's no indication of why it wouldn't, because he has talent. There's going to be a lot of schools, particularly down in the state of Florida, where there's a bunch of FBS schools now.
And that's why this question comes from Fort Myers, Florida.
Yeah.
The follow-up on the comment is, folks knew Calandria was a player.
Yeah. I mean, certainly he had a big name in the high school circles down there. The Tampa, St. Pete area is a big high school football hotbed, and I mean he had over, I think, 7,000 yards passing during his high school career. So a lot of the people around the state know about him. Some of the Florida schools, I believe, maybe offered him. He didn't have but one other FBS offer, I think, from, or at least a Power 5 offer, and that was from Kentucky early on. He actually committed to somebody and backed out of it. I think it might have been Middle Tennessee State or somebody like that. But so there's a lot of people that know about him, and everybody's always shopping for a quarterback who can throw the football, because that's the name of the game these days. If you can't throw the football, you're behind the 8 ball. And so he's going to be a hot commodity should he be benched, and it depends on the kid. And sometimes his family and his friends, they're influenced by people like that. Colleges come to his high school coach and say, hey, Anthony should be starting somewhere. He could come to our school and start and be here 3 or 4 year starter. So that's a very good question, and I don't think anybody knows the answer right now. And the weeks to come will determine whether he's playing or if he's on the bench. If I'm Tony Elliott and I decide to play Tony Muskett, I'm going to find a way to get Calandria into the game. I know it's not ideal playing 2 quarterbacks, but it's not ideal losing a guy that could be your
Quarterback of the future.
The guy that could be here for another 3 years after this year.
Jerry Ratcliffe dropping dimes. He's 100% right. Middle Tennessee State, Calandria committed to in April of 2022. Calandria received offers, like Hootie Ratcliffe said, from Kentucky, received offers from UCF, received offers from Utah State, the Hawaii Rainbows. Wow, that would have been something to watch him in that.
That's definitely a school that likes to throw the football. Western Carolina offered him. Georgia State offered him. Bowling Green offered him. Florida Atlantic offered him. UVA offered him on June 13th, 2022. He got offers from the Richmond Spiders. The Arkansas State offered him. Western Kentucky. The Buffalo Bulls, Grambling State, Tennessee Tech, Jacksonville State. So we're looking at a youngster that was offered, but not by heavy hitters. So in a lot of ways overlooked, and perhaps overlooked because of his size, his height. I mean, we don't talk, he's not the prototypical drop back passer. He's not 6'3", 6'4", seeing over the offensive line. This guy is not the tallest quarterback, but what he makes up for, what he loses with the height, he makes up for with the athleticism, the quickness, the arm strength, the moxie, the ability to throw on the run. And frankly speaking, I think Calandria may think he's the best player on the field anytime he is out on the field. He has a lot of confidence.
He's got a lot of confidence, and I love it. And I think, you know this better than anyone. I would imagine his teammates are gravitated or magnetized to confidence like that.
Yeah, particularly on a football team that's not having a successful season or struggling to find itself, you've got to form an identity somewhere, and you've got to have somebody you can believe in. And if it's your quarterback, it's even better, because that's the guy that has the ball in his hands and can make magic happen, and this kid can. And you want to rally around a guy like that, and he has their confidence. They'll go to war with him any day. And he's a very positive kid. He's not rattled easily. And you mentioned 2 Florida schools on that list, so I guarantee you they'll be keeping their eyes on what's going on up here, because if things go south for him in terms of playing time. You don't think UCF might be knocking on his parents' door there in St. Pete?
You're getting props from Edward Jenkins on Twitter. I'm seeing 8 states watching the program. Wahoo fans, ACC fans, Virginia Tech fans, jump in with the conversation. We'll adapt to your commentary. John Blair says this is a really, really good show right now. Jerry Ratcliffe providing fantastic insight. The man's a Virginia Sports Hall of Famer. He's covered this team for 40-plus years. The question continues to come on the feed. This is a really good question. This is from Grayson, who's watching right over there, Hootie, in North Downtown.
Mm-hmm.
He says if Tony Elliott makes the mistake and he plays Tony Muskett in place of Anthony Calandria, if I were Calandria, I would transfer from this program as well. It's a what have you done for me lately mindset with the transfer portal and the NIL. I think that's a good comment right there.
It truly is. And, I mean, we've seen evidence of that all the time. I can't remember the numbers, but it's staggering how many people transfer. It used to be when the transfer portal first opened, it was mostly just quarterbacks. It's every position now, but particularly quarterbacks, because schools are always looking for a guy that can put points on the board, and this kid has shown he can do that. And he's got the fan base excited. He's got them believing that maybe something good can happen. You risk losing some of your fans if you take the ball out of his hands right now. So you gotta find a way for him to play, even if you're going with Muskett as the starter. You got to get Calandria some time.
This is a good question right here. We appreciate this one from Keswick, Virginia, and from Lauren. Who does this quarterback remind you of? Past quarterbacks from UVA.
No one really, because of his size. He's only 5'11".
5'11" listed.
Listed.
Yeah.
We know that can be exaggerated.
Right.
Particularly in college and high school football. But, he doesn't – he's a young-looking kid. He's a baby-faced kid.
Baby-face.
He doesn't look like that he's a college freshman, really. But I can't say that he reminds me of anybody, because he's so different than Brennan Armstrong. He's so different than Bryce Perkins and Kurt Benkert. He's not a Sean Moore or a Matt Blunden type guy.
I don't think he's
not an Aaron Brooks.
Right. I don't think he's got the explosiveness or the open field athleticism of a Biscuit Hagens.
No.
Biscuit Hagens was able to play a number of positions at the collegiate level and at the pro level. Calandria can't do that. That's a great question. He's not a Sewell. He's not a Schaub. He's not a Blunden.
No.
Who does this guy remind you of, Kurt? Is he a Mikowski?
No, not really.
Not a Magic Man?
No. I would say if it's anybody, it's probably closer to Biscuit than anybody, because
Biscuit wasn't the tallest.
No, he was a little undersized. He was just a great athlete.
Yeah.
He could make things happen with his legs and his arm, and was really good out of the pocket, could throw in the pocket. So I would say, if anybody, probably Biscuit.
Marcus Hagens now doing amazing things at
Penn State
with another Wahoo who you're very high on.
Anthony Poindexter.
The only man in the world that Hootie Ratcliffe allows him to call Mr. Ratcliffe.
That's right.
Anthony Poindexter. Questions, put them in the feed. We will relay them live on air. This is a really good question here. Hootie, what does it matter with the running backs? We can't seem to run the football to save our lives. If they can run the football a little bit more, that would take some pressure off of Anthony Calandria. And that one right there is coming in from Seth. I'm going to mess up your last name, Seth. I'm just going to call you Seth right now. Is it N-Rupp? Seth N-Rupp, watching the program in Short Pump.
Well, it's been a long time since Virginia's been able to establish a good running game. Bronco tried to do it and never really could. It's been a point of emphasis. Mike London tried to do it, and he had some success with it, with Smoke Mizell and a couple other guys. But nothing to the impact of what it used to be like when George Welsh was producing one NFL running back after another, after another, after another. Some of those guys were just recently nominated for the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
One of those guys, a movie star on this program, thanks to Jerry Ratcliffe.
Thomas Jones, our good friend, and Tiki Barber, and Chris Warren, who started his career here and then ended up at Ferrum, but played for years with the Seattle Seahawks.
Terry Kirby.
Barry Word. There were so many really great running backs. Anthony Womack was another that followed through.
Phoebus High School.
Yep, and Al Groh had a few guys too. So it's been a while since Virginia's been able to run the ball. And back, if you'll remember, one of the main reasons why George Welsh's teams and Al Groh's early teams with Alvin Pierman and some of those guys could run the football successfully is they had NFL linemen.
They had offensive linemen, yeah.
Yeah, they could block guys and dominate the line of scrimmage. And if you can dominate the line of scrimmage, you can control the football game. You can do anything you want to do. And that's not the case right now. It hasn't been the case here in a while. They've had a couple of decent offensive lines in recent years, but they transferred out. They had two essentially back-to-back years of decent offensive linemen. They all transferred out. One of them was an All-American, for goodness sake, went to Michigan and won the Outland Trophy. That's what's wrong with the running game right now, is that the offensive line is inexperienced to a degree.
Lacking depth.
There's not any, there might be an NFL lineman in there somewhere, but they're yet to show us that. They haven't developed to that point. And I keep going back to this. It's one of the greatest lines Al Groh ever said was, he said, Jerry, all running backs run the same when there's no hole. And if there's no hole, not many of these guys are talented enough to make their own hole. You don't have any Barry Sanders or Jim Browns in that backfield. I think they have some decent running backs. I think Paris Jones is pretty decent. I think Kobe Pace has some promise. Mike Hollins runs hard. Xavier Brown, who's been injured, I think has some promise. But, if there's no hole, where are you going to run?
There you go. 2.8 yards per carry for the Virginia running backs against NC State. I'll say it again. 2.8 yards per carry for the running backs.
Can't do that.
You can do that, and especially with the first-year quarterback. It puts too much pressure on him. If you're any defensive coordinator worth your salt, you stack the box and you say, Calandria, beat us through the air, and until you prove to us that you can consistently beat us through the air, we're going to stack the box and take away every running lane possible and put you in third and long situations and see if the turnovers present themselves. They did against Maryland. They did against NC State. And, they're momentum killers. Yeah. We saw what happened against NC State. Momentum killers.
And that's going to be a blueprint for every defensive coordinator out there, is jam the tackle box, make them throw it. And, if you can get a good running game going, that takes a lot of pressure off of Calandria or Musket or whoever your quarterback is, because they can use the play action to freeze the linebackers or the safeties.
And it takes pressure off the defense.
Yes.
Because they chew up clock.
Absolutely. So a good running game makes everything better, and right now it's just not happening. They have made some strides. They've gotten a little better week by week, but they're not there yet, and I don't know what's going to take to get there.
We got a Boston College football team on the docket. Kickoff Saturday in Chestnut Hill. The Eagles, they're not very good. They've got one win on the season. They beat Holy Cross 31-28. If there's anything they can hang their hat on, the Eagles, it's a 31-29 loss to Florida State in Chestnut Hill. Florida State, the Seminoles, 4-0 on the season, 2-0 in conference play. We saw them beat up Clemson in a tight barn burner on Saturday on national TV. The Vegas odds makers, Hootie Ratcliffe, I'll throw the lines to you, then pass the mic to you. They got the Eagles a 3-point favorite. They got the over-under at 55 points. Kickoff at 2 o'clock. Where do you want to go with Boston College?
Well, they're probably a 3-point favorite because they're home.
Playing at home.
If it was here, it might be the other way around. Virginia might be a 1-point favorite. But you're right. BC's not very good. John Hafley's job is clearly on the line up there. They played a decent game against Florida State, although I attribute that more to Florida State being unfocused and looking ahead to Clemson than I do going on the road to play BC. although they have struggled a little bit, Florida State over the years, and in Boston. They just got their doors blown off at Louisville this past weekend, 56-28. Louisville scored, Jerry, the first 7 times they had the football and had 374 yards of offense in the first half and 7 explosive plays of 27 or more yards. So when you look at that and you look and see what Calandria has done in the recent weeks with Virginia's offense, Virginia has a chance to go into Boston, into Chestnut Hill, and get something going early against a defense that clearly is shaky.
Pitiful.
Yeah. And so they could go into Boston and win this game if they can eliminate some of the dumb mistakes they've been making. And I know Hafley said that he had never seen his team play like that, and he guaranteed it wouldn't happen again. But you can't guarantee that if your defense is that shaky and your offense is not moving the football and the other team is playing well. And if Virginia has a chance to go in there and establish something early, set a tone, and perhaps steal one on the road, which would do wonders for these guys' confidence if they could do that, especially coming home to play William and Mary.
That's right.
Now, Boston College has they switched quarterbacks, I think, for the Florida State game. He's a transfer from Central Florida, Thomas Castellanos. He put up 400 yards against Florida State, and 95 of that was his own rushing, so he threw for 305. But against Louisville, he was okay. He threw for 265 yards and 3 touchdowns. So you got to be careful of him. But if I'm Virginia, I'm thinking, if I'm Des Kitchens, the offensive coordinator, I'm looking strong at what Louisville did on those first 7 possessions, all those explosive plays, and how to get something going offensively and take a little pressure off my defense.
Boston College falls 28-56 to Louisville, absolutely hammered Boston College. And it's important to emphasize this, guys. This is the 2-game stretch where the Wahoos need to get some victories if they're going to win on the season. They got Boston College and Chestnut Hill. We just found out a 12 o'clock kick against London and William & Mary at Scott Stadium on the 7th of October, a Saturday. And then you got a pretty brutal stretch. You're at North Carolina in Chapel Hill. You're at Miami. This Georgia Tech football team's a 500 team, but Georgia Tech's got some upside. Then you got Louisville and Duke and Virginia Tech to close the season. I mean, that is a brutal way to finish the year. So Boston College and William & Mary, at least on paper, are looking like your 2 victories if you're going to get 2 wins this season.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, playing at Carolina and Miami is going to be a challenge for most anybody. The Louisville game, I think it's on the road. It depends on how you're playing.
In Louisville, you're right.
Yeah, Virginia has had some decent games in Louisville, but it's a hard place for Virginia to win.
Thursday night, 7:30 kickoff, national TV, ESPN, Louisville, Thursday, November 9th.
And then you got Duke, and a lot of people are thinking right now that Duke might actually challenge Florida State for the ACC title.
Duke looks great.
Duke looks great, and they dominated Clemson for the most part. We'll see how they go as the season goes along. I know College Game Day is going to be in Durham this weekend for the first time in history. And then you got the Hokies coming in here, and the way Tech is struggling right now, you can't discount Virginia possibly winning that game. So if Virginia, and it depends a lot about how Virginia develops between now and then, and what Tech does as well. But there are some chances to be in some games, but you're right. For this most part, the second half of the schedule is pretty challenging.
How about this stat? Viewers and listeners, listen to this stat. I'm seeing 13 states watching us right here on the heat map. Duke Blue Devils, points scored on the season. Duke is 4-0 overall, 1-0 in conference play. He mentions the victory against Clemson. Duke has scored 149 points, Hootie. They've given up 35.
And they've been smart in scheduling because look, other than Clemson, who they had to play, look at who else they've played.
Lafayette, Northwestern, and Connecticut. They beat Connecticut 41-7, Northwestern 38-14, Lafayette 42-7. Now, Duke does host Notre Dame. They got Notre Dame coming up in a few days. They got NC State on the 14th out of a bye week. Then they're at Florida State, at Louisville, host Wake Forest, at UNC, at UVA, and Pitt to close the year.
Yeah, and
but to your point, they did some cupcakes in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and that's what I think Virginia should be doing right
Definitely.
now. Instead of playing Maryland and Tennessee, you should be playing some of the worst teams you can find in college football and try to build some wins, build some confidence. I don't think Virginia's been real smart about their scheduling, but I know some of that was probably done when Bronco had things rolling, and it looked like things were right for the future, but Duke and Wake Forest have both, and even NC State to some degree, have got some rental victims on their schedules, and that's what I think that's what you got to do until you can learn to win consistently. Notre Dame's coming to Duke. That's why College Game Day is there. It's not because of Duke. I mean, it is to a degree because they're undefeated, but it's because Notre Dame's coming to town. And
Notre Dame, a tough loss against Ohio State. I turned that game off before the game was over.
Yeah.
Before Notre Dame trotted out 2 consecutive plays of 10 men on the field and allowed Ohio State to steal a win. I count this question in 7 different forms right now on the show. And this is a very pointed question about the head coach.
Mm-hmm.
7 different people have asked this question on the show airs all over social media. And they're specifically asking you if Elliott's job is safe if he posts a bagel in the win column this year.
That's a tough call. I think it's only happened once in Virginia history, as bad as Virginia football has been or was over that one particular stretch.
Was it Sonny or Bestwick?
It was Sonny. It was his second year. He was 0-12. But there were some other sidebars to that season that probably...
We don't have to go down that road.
No, we won't go down that road. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to go 0-12 for one thing. It's possible, but I don't think they will because they're playing better. And if you're Tony Elliott and their coaches, you're looking for some strides, some improvement here or there. Anything is a win when you're trying to rebuild a football team to this magnitude. You got to remember all the good players that left this team through the portal the last 2 years. You got to remember Robert and I telling recruits to back out of their national letters of intent.
Brennan Armstrong leaves. Offensive lineman coach leaves.
Yeah.
Robert and I is poo-pooing the program.
Yeah, and they lost some really good recruits. They lost
the tragedy.
They lost some 4-star linemen. They lost some dynamic playmakers that had signed letters of intent and then backed out because of the coaching change. So you're looking for any kind of progress week by week, and we're seeing some incremental progress. I know it hasn't showed up in the win column, but they could have beaten JMU. They could have beaten NC State. I don't think they were going to win at Maryland, although they were in it going into the fourth quarter, and they had a chance. If they can win the next 2 weeks, and that's a big if, but if they can, you're 2-4 at the midpoint of the season.
I would guarantee this, and I hate the word guarantee.
Yeah.
If we had told Wahoo fans that at the midpoint of the season, UVA would be 2-4 overall and would have found a quarterback that could have been the face of the program for the next 3 to 4 years, I would bet you 80% of the fan base would have taken it.
I think you're probably right about that, Jerry. And because the quarterback thing was
unknown.
Was very unknown.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were questioning whether Tony Muskett could make that transition from FCS to FBS and be successful. There didn't appear to be anybody behind him except Jay Woolfolk, and then he was gone. So the quarterback situation was a big quandary heading into the season. And like we said so many times on this show, the Vegas guys had Virginia's over and under in the win column at 3.5 games.
I don't think they're going to cover 3.5.
I don't think they're going to cover it, but it's not totally out of the question. So
here's a very tough question for you.
Yeah.
I'll give a plug for our partners over at Stablecraft.
Yes.
Stablecraft, guys, is a fresh chapter in the ongoing entrepreneurial story that began with the founding of the Hermitage Hill Farm and Stables in 2006. This brewery is all about quality beer, quality cider, fantastic in-person experience, live music, an option for you guys to watch college football. Stablecraft in Waynesboro has got fantastic beer, and I know beer like the Pope knows holy water. This is a fantastic question for you that's coming to you from Allentown, Pennsylvania's finest.
yes,
We'll leave it at that.
love Allentown.
Okay, this question for you. If the team posts a bagel in the win column and Calandria chooses to transfer at the end of the year, is Elliott's job in jeopardy?
That's a tough one. It depends on a lot of factors, I think. A lot of them is going to depend on Carla Williams, the AD, and where she stands on this. She hired him. If the fan base if there's so much unrest in the fan base, particularly if they stop coming to games, if the heavy hitters decide that they want to go in another direction, Carla's got to make a tough decision. And if she doesn't, she could be in hot water as well. How many times have we seen ADs
Often.
go down because they
head
support,
football coach.
They support a head football coach. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, and I'm not saying that Carla's job is in jeopardy. Please don't at me on that. But this thing could go in a lot of different directions. If those things do happen, they go 0-12, and Calandria leaves the program. I mean,
you're starting from scratch at that point.
that looks like everything is becoming unglued. And again, I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't think they're going to go 0-12. But it's a distinct possibility. But a lot of times that's out of the hands of the AD even. A lot of times it's the Board of Visitors is getting a lot of pressure from the heavy hitters. We've seen that happen before. And so it's a possibility. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's certainly something that you can't dismiss. I think a lot of people are going to say, there's still going to be a lot of people that say, even if they do go 0-12, that he deserves one more year. I don't know that will happen. It's very unusual, or at least it has been in the past, to dismiss the coach after 2 seasons and not give him a chance to recruit his own players. But we're not in the same college
it's a different
football
era.
world that we used to be in.
100%. A lot of people asking your take on Des Kitchens, the offensive coordinator.
I think we got to wait and see what he can do with Calandria over the course of the season. I've seen some things the last couple of weeks that I like. He's starting to use some screen passes a little bit more, like the one to Malik Washington the other night that went for, I think, 40 or 50 yards. I think he's on the same page with Calandria, and that's a big part of it. I know he wants to develop a running game. They believe in a balanced offense, but it's really tough right now to do that. And I think that's why they're probably going to have to depend on Calandria's arm to stay in games, because the running game's just not getting it done. I think the jury is still out on Des Kitchens. I know his name came up in the press conference last week with Tony Elliott, and Tony defended him and said, if you really want to talk X's and O's with somebody, you talk to Des Kitchens, because he understands the X's and O's as good as anybody. I know a lot of Virginia fans are not going to buy that, because I know a lot of people are sour on him, but I think the jury's still out. I think you got to give him a chance to, over the course of the season. I don't think you can judge him on last year alone.
Hootie Ratcliffe, guys, the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer. Let's run the Atlantic Coast schedule and take a look at the teams that you think are truly impactful and teams that could contend for titles. I highlighted earlier in the show, guys, that there are 6 ACC football teams undefeated. Those 6, Florida State, Louisville, Duke, North Carolina, Miami, and Syracuse. Now, of those 6, 4 of them have played ACC games: North Carolina, Duke, Louisville, and Florida State. Florida State's 2-0 in conference play, so is Louisville. Duke and North Carolina 1-0 in conference play. Miami and Syracuse yet to play an ACC game. 6 unblemished. Pick them apart for us.
Well, Florida State is definitely in the catbird seat after beating Clemson on the road. And that game could have gone either way. I thought Florida State would be a little bit more dominant, really, because Florida State has more playmakers, I think, than anybody else in the conference. They were lucky to win that game, really. It was that fumble recovery at the end was iced it for them. But Clemson seems to be out of the picture. They've lost 2 conference games. I don't see how that they can make that up. I don't think Florida State is going to lose twice in the league. They could, because they still have to play Duke. That game is going to be interesting, I think. That game could settle the whole thing. Don't go to sleep on Miami. There's tons of talent there, and they might be finally getting it together for the first time in a long time. And don't go to sleep on North Carolina, because they've got a Heisman Trophy candidate in May. He can win a lot of games for you, particularly close games, and their defense seems to be a little bit better. Syracuse has been somewhat of a surprise, but Jason Beck, who was Bronco Mendenhall's quarterback coach, and a lot of people wanted Beck
to be the offensive coordinator.
Virginia's offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
They're putting up a ton of points, Jerry, every week.
Syracuse right now, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to burn a lot of Wahoo fans up right now. 177 points scored for the Orange, the most offensive production in the entire conference.
Yeah, no question about it. And I attribute that a lot to Jason Beck. I think he would have been an excellent offensive coordinator here. And there was no hesitation in elevating him to that position at Syracuse once Robert and I left. And I think Syracuse has made an upgrade in that position. I think Jason Beck is excellent. He impressed me so much by being able to find talent. He found Brendan Armstrong. He found Bryce Perkins. And he knew what to do with it.
A lot of folks, and now hindsight's 2020, are waxing nostalgic on what could have been with a Poindexter at head coach, a Jason Beck as the offensive coordinator, and a Biscuit Higgins as the lead recruiter here in Charlottesville. I mean, that's a hell of a threesome right there.
I like it.
I know you do. You championed the Poindexter for head coach.
I did, and they didn't listen to me.
But, hindsight, maybe they should have. So if you, of any of those 6, what's your power ranking like? You got Florida State in the catbird seat. You said, what do you got, Duke in the 2 slot just because they beat Clemson?
I do. I have Duke there. Then I think probably North Carolina.
I think UNC too.
Miami is a close. Not much separating, I don't think, Miami and Carolina at this point. Syracuse and Louisville, I think. Syracuse, because their offense is so good, they could break in there, but they still have to play a really good opponent. So we'll see when the tough schedule gets tougher. Louisville with Jeff Brom, who was once upon a time Louisville's quarterback, could have been Virginia's head coach before Bronco Mendenhall. If Bronco had turned the job down, Jeff Brom was set to come in here for a second interview the following Monday. I think Bronco took the job on a Friday. I'll never forget that, because when I broke the story, it used to be with your iPhones. Do you remember when people would retweet something and your iPhone screen would light up?
It would blow up. Yeah, you went viral.
Mine looked like a river.
Yeah.
It was rolling so quickly. And even the BYU people were stunned. The BYU Worldwide Television Network called and got me on their network immediately, because as I broke the story, he was telling his team. Most of the people at BYU had no idea that was coming. But anyway, had Bronco turned that job down on a Friday, Brom was set to come here from Western Kentucky on a Monday for his second interview, and I think he would have taken this job.
Would have been a good hire.
Would have been a good hire.
Yeah. Questions are coming in fast and furious. We promise we'll get to basketball for you. Before we get to basketball, this has come in nearly a dozen times about Virginia Tech football. What does it matter with the Hokies? I mean, the Hokies' fall from grace has been quick. It's been dramatic. It's been, you look at football in the Commonwealth right now, and is your best football team in the Commonwealth the one in Harrisonburg?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Is your second best football team in the Commonwealth, is it the one in Lynchburg or is it the one in Richmond?
Well, it might be Liberty because they're scoring a lot of points. Then again, I haven't paid attention to who all they've played, but don't discount William and Mary either. They're number 5 in the FCS rankings.
Right.
And they're coming to town in 2 weeks. And Mike London is loaded. He's got most of his players back from last year's national semifinals.
And he's got a loaded coaching staff.
Yeah, and a lot of former Wahoos on that staff. So they're going to come in here and try to make some noise. I don't follow Tech as closely as I do Virginia, clearly. So I'm not an expert on the Hokies. Maybe we could bring somebody on here as a guest who is, but Jason Fuentes really ran that program into the ground. And they are going through the same thing as Virginia. It's a major rebuild. I don't think they had some of the talent issues leaving the program like Virginia did, although they did lose a lot of good players. So they're in a major rebuild as well. I think the state's wide open right now for somebody, Virginia or Virginia Tech, to make a major jump and take control of the state.
And corner the recruiting market.
And right now, neither one of them are doing that. And so it's just it's low-hanging fruit for somebody out there to
100%.
To reestablish themselves as the major power in the state of Virginia, and nobody's doing it.
Virginia Tech, ladies and gentlemen, is a paltry 1-3 overall. The Hokies have been outscored 100-86 on the season. Virginia Tech, the path to victory is challenging. I mean, they're at Florida State in a couple of weeks. They got Wake Forest in Blacksburg. They got high-flying Syracuse in Blacksburg. Then they travel to Louisville. They got NC State at home. I mean, the Virginia Tech matchup is in Charlottesville on the 25th of November. You throw out the records for that one. Anything can happen in that one. I mean, you're looking at a football team with Virginia Tech that, if you put the over-under at 3.5 wins, I'm not sure where I'd put my money. They got one at least.
I really thought they would beat Marshall. I didn't think they would lose that game, and that's got to really upset the people in Blacksburg. You would have never thought that a few years ago, that they would be capable of losing to Marshall.
Lost to Purdue, lost to Rutgers on the road. Boilermakers beat them 24-7. Marshall clips them 24-17. Purdue, 24-17. Rutgers pounds them. Their only victory against Old Dominion.
And that's and Old Dominion has beaten them a couple of times during the Fuentes stretch.
Right.
So, it's a sad state for FBS football right now, and although JMU is making a lot of noise, but most of the people still look at Virginia or Virginia Tech as the pilot programs in the state of Virginia. Even though JMU is having more success, people are waiting for one of these programs to wake up, if not both of them.
There you go. Basketball season, little saving grace right there. Tough pill to swallow. One of the most coveted recruits in the nation chooses Duke. A guy that, let's cut to the chase, could be, as a freshman, one of the best players in college basketball.
Yeah.
A guy that can do anything on the basketball court. Still, Tony Bennett's team seems absolutely loaded. Practice has started. John Paul Jones Arena, it's just a matter of weeks before that's rocking again. Where do you want to go with Tony Bennett and this Virginia men's basketball team?
Well, we'll look back to this past week when Con Knueppel, I've been mispronouncing his name, it's Knueppel, it's Knueppel, from Milwaukee. A lot of people, and I had good vibes about it too. I really thought the kid was going to come here. I know that Tony Bennett and those guys during his recruiting visit and his entire recruiting process did everything they could possibly do to get the kid in the fold. And I don't know exactly what happened. Duke came in late. It's hard to beat Duke on players. They took T.J. Powers away from Virginia, who led on him for a long time. Duke came in late, took him, came in late, took Knipple. I talked to his uncle, Jeff Norgard, who played, I believe, in the NBA and was a teammate of Tony Bennett's. I know that he wanted his nephew to come to Virginia. I have a feeling that his mom probably wanted him to come here because of her affiliation with the Bennett family. Heard that some of the players said that on his official visit here, he seemed a little aloof, a little distant, so maybe he had already made up his mind that he was going to go to Duke. I don't know. But it was a recruiting blow because it was a major star that Virginia really wanted, and I think would have taken this program to the Final Four. But you got to move on. They had a couple of other good recruits that came here over the weekend. Nate Ament from Northern Virginia, he's the #1 recruit in the state for the class of, is he the 25 or a 26 kid? And another kid, I got their names down here. Latrell Allman, a power forward from John Marshall. He's class of 26. He's top 30 in the nation in his class. And Ament, who's offered by Duke and a bunch of other schools, is also top 20 nationally in his class. He's a forward as well. So they both visited over the weekend. I guess they were at the game Friday night. But yeah, they've started practice. I know Tony Bennett's very excited about this team. He feels like that it's doesn't have the holes that some of his teams have
This
had
team is
in the
loaded.
past. I think they're loaded. They've
They're
got
loaded.
a lot of guys that can shoot it.
Yeah.
A lot of guys who can score. A lot of versatility. A lot of depth. He's going to have a hard time again.
Spread of the
deciding
minutes.
Playing time. Yeah.
Yeah, spread of the minutes. I mean, let's talk potential starting lineup here. I think you got two, maybe three locks for the starting lineup. I think Reese Beekman's an unquestioned lock and the leader of this basketball team. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with us there. I think Isaac McNeely can shoot the lights out of the basketball. I think he's a strong lock for this starting lineup. And I think the upside of the lanky and explosive Ryan Dunn puts him in the starting lineup, the DeAndre Hunter clone. Where do you see the other two spots shaken out? Does it go Dante Harris, the transfer from Georgetown? Does it go the kid that's transferring from St. Thomas, Minnesota? Rhodey? Does it go, how do you see the other two positions playing out?
I think they'll probably go with Jordan Minor.
For some size?
Yeah, for some size. You got to have a guy down low.
6'8", 240.
He plays bigger than his size. I think he has an incredible wingspan, if I recall. Bond is a guy you got to keep your eye on. I heard he's really developed well. The kid that transferred in from Oklahoma can shoot as well. He started out last season for the Sooners, just tearing it up.
You're talking Jake Groves?
Jake Groves. He went into a little bit of a slump and then kind of shot his way out of it at the end. But he's another shooter, scorer. Rhodey can shoot the eyes out of it. I think he led all the nation's freshmen in
points per game
last season. McNeely is, I think he's going to be even better because he's the kind of kid that works hard on his game. I think he'll be more of a force this year than he has been, just because I think he's probably developing his overall game, not just a three-point shooter.
I'd love to see McNeely put the ball on the deck and attack the rack.
I think he will.
And get to the rim a little bit more. That's what I would love to see right here.
And Harris, my son did a great story on him, talking to his high school coach. and some of the things he's done. But they've got so many different parts, Jerry, that they can. You know, we know that Tony Bennett likes to play 2 point guards at the same time, so I'm sure we're going to see some of that. He's been known to play 3 guards and even sometimes 4 guards at the same time. So I think a lot of these guys are going to be interchangeable, and he can throw a small lineup at you, a bigger lineup at you. A lot of it may be determined about how well they play defense, because if you don't play defense for Tony, you don't see the court as much. So I think he's just delighted with all the talent that he's collected on this team.
You got this team as Sweet 16 caliber?
Right now, yeah, absolutely. I think so, and they may not win the ACC regular season like last year's team did, but I think this team, again, has a lot of guys who can score and a lot of guys who can shoot, and that's the thing that kind of let them down late last season.
The shooting.
They just couldn't buy a basket at times, and it showed. And there's no way in the world they should have ever lost to Furman in the NCAAs. And there was also a little dissension on the team. That's no longer an issue. I think this is just going to be a healthy, fun team to watch play basketball.
Virginia men's basketball, guys, they got the blue and white scrimmage on Saturday, October 14th, and the season opens on the 6th of November against Tarleton State. I mean, we are talking 5 weeks away.
Not long.
Not long from the start of college basketball. This is one of our best shows yet. He's the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer, Jerry Ratcliffe. We encourage you, the viewers and listeners, to go to jerryratcliffe.com. I'll say it again, jerryratcliffe.com for anything UVA related. Hootie, we got some drinking to do. Stablecraft Brewery's got a 6-pack here for us, for Judah and I. I think Scott and Hootie have got some, was it blackberry or blueberry cider?
Blackberry cider.
Blackberry cider. That looks delicious.
It does look delicious.
It looks delicious right there. Waynesboro's finest, guys, Stablecraft Brewery. Enjoy live music, activities for families and kids, great craft beer, great craft cider, fantastic food, an opportunity to watch college football and college basketball. Stablecraft Brewery in Waynesboro. Mayor just walked by the studio right there, Mayor Lloyd Snook. Great guy, absolutely. Judah Wickhauer, props to you. Hootie Ratcliffe.
He's the man. Judah
is the man. Hootie, you crushed it today. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. I thank all the people out there viewing. We appreciate your support, and don't forget the Virginia basketball women. We'll talk about them some as we get closer to the season. They're going to be good, I think.
I can't wait to highlight UVA women's basketball. The captain of the team, Sam Brunel.
Sam is awesome gal.
Great ambassador of that program.
Absolutely.
Jerry Ratcliffe of jerryratcliffe.com. For Judah Wickhauer and Hootie, my name is Jerry Miller, and this is the Jerry and Jerry Show. The I Love CVille Show, guys, is up in 59 minutes. Thank you kindly for joining us. So long, everybody. That was awesome. That was fantastic. He's going to tell us.